this bombing, right? The U.S. has apparently bombed a couple of artillery pieces that were being used to shell a city inhabited by the Kurds. Now, let's just try to get this straight because it is complex. I would say there are three blocks you can more or less identify. There's the Iran, Syria, Hezbollah block, and generally that's the better one. That's the one that needs to be stronger. Then you've got this other one, the Saudi-Egypt block. Maybe Jordan can be included. That I would think is a purely opportunistic block. In other words, the Saudis, in their feud with Qatar, have got to batten themselves onto some large power. Egypt is that. Sisi needs the Saudi money. I don't think he has any love for the Saudis. The Saudis need some big country, while Egypt is the biggest. So I think that's an opportunistic, that's an unprincipled combination, although our sympathy, as always, goes to the Nasserist or neo-Nasserist Sisi. And then you got this other block, Qatar, Turkey, Hamas, and the Israelis, strangely enough. In other words, it's complex, but maybe the Israelis would rather go with the Saudis. I don't know. But the fact is that there's a de facto convergence. If Qatar is destroying all the Arab nation states, then the Israelis are going to be happy with that. So it's complex. And I've got to stress this thing. The Qatar, Turkey, Hamas connection is for sure, right? Remember the new emir of Qatar went to Gaza. You notice in all of this stuff, if there's a real crisis in northern Iraq, in other words, if ISIS is really the end of the world, 2 months ago, the U.S. would have bombed ISIS. And if it were really the end of the world, the Turkish army, of course, could flatten ISIS. They might at the same time flatten the Kurds, which would be counterproductive. So this is again, it's a real mass of contradictions because of all the deceptions and all the sellouts and betrayals that are going on. So where is Turkey? Where is the great Erdogan? Where's the new Ottoman emperor? Well, he's got an election on Sunday. And he's, of course, happy if ISIS attacks the Kurds and the Peshmerga. He's very, very happy with that. But then again, it doesn't look coherent from the Western media narrative point of view. All right. So we also have the fact that the Kurds have apparently been defeated. There was boundless confidence in the Peshmerga, but now we're told the Peshmerga have been defeated because the ISIS have captured so much modern U.S. equipment that the Peshmerga are outgunned. That's now the media line on Peshmerga. At the same time, though, inside this Kurdish coalition, there are people saying the Peshmerga officers have to be put on trial. Now, that gets us back to this whole thing with ISIS. Does ISIS prevail because it's so good militarily? Or are the generals and the officers on the other side bribed by Qatar in the same way the U.S. bribed the Iraqi army at various times? You get the picture. And I think that bribery part is quite plausible because it's Qatar, right? What do they have to work with? A lot of money. So I think that's actually happening. Now, where does all this go? I'm not sure. However, it seems to me that the NATO scenario was not to bomb ISIS, right? You see there's such reluctance by Obama. Why? Because, again, ISIS is a wonderful tool to continue the work that they began in Libya and have continued in Syria and would like to export elsewhere, the destruction of all the nation states. So I think it's unlikely that the bomb of ISIS will get very muscular. I don't think it's going to be a robust bombing campaign. It's a few things just for public relations. But still, the commitment of NATO, U.S., British, and the rest, was to force Maliki out and not to do anything against ISIS, screaming that it's the end of the world, but not lifting a finger until Maliki could be ousted because he's a Shiite, he's close to Iran, or at least he was. And then it gets even more complicated. I think this also throws some light on the tergiversations of Kerry concerning Israel-Palestine. That Kerry was trying to give Hamas a success. It's plausible, so that the Hamas-Qatar-Turkey axis would be stronger. I would also point in passing, there's a 9/11 revival coming from certain quarters, certain reactionary Republican congressmen are coming forward and saying that we have the famous 28 minutes on the Saudis from the joint congressional investigation of 9/11 from 2002, and that's going to blow the lid off the Saudis. And every opportunist is jumping on this. Former Senator Graham and Congressman Jones from North Carolina and such people. What's going on? I think the idea with that, and I think some people in Britain from the 9/11 truth community in Great Britain seem to have gotten the idea that it's an attempt to bash the Saudis, and it has something to do with the U.S. wanting to support Qatar and Turkey, and therefore Hamas, against the Saudis. And that's also perhaps why Brennan is getting slammed on this the snooping issue, right? Did the CIA snoop on the senators? Well, yeah, they did. He had denied it, so now they're getting him. So the idea is that the Saudi party, Brennan, of course, former CIA station chief in Riyadh, bound hand and foot to the Saudis, he's under attack. So the idea is to revive 9/11 in a very modest way in order to slam the Saudis' blood on them. And of course, dear friends, that will not do. You got to get 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in USA, the 5th edition with the 46 drills and exercises. And you got to tell me, how did those Saudis, Prince Bandar, of course, a genius, but a superman of diplomacy and deception. But how could he set up the 46 drills over a period of even 15 or even more years to make this happen? It just doesn't work. It's made in USA. There's no competition. There's no question about it. So there we have it. Going further, right? National Pentagon Radio this morning, this woman who's named after a brand of beer, Labatt, says that the order created at Westphalia is going down. Maybe she let the cat out of the bag. The Westphalia order is that there are independent sovereign nation states, not empires. That's the state system. It's a state system, not an imperial system. And it's not as bad as the alternatives. Of course, I think she meant Versailles, the Sykes-Picot. Remember, we wouldn't know about the Sykes-Picot if Trotsky hadn't published all of this stuff in Pravda after the Bolshevik Revolution. But Sykes-Picot was then built into the Treaty of Sèvres, and that's the bad stuff. So there's an imperialist thing. But the status quo right now is what we need. What we need, of course, is a Marshall Plan. So here are the caveats that I would say. First of all, there must be no bombing of Syria, Iran. No bombing of Syria, Iran. And Qatar has to stop backing ISIS. We'll elaborate on this in just a second. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So let's see where this goes. But we don't need sloganeering, right? We've had commentators telling us today, when it comes to Obama, you can't take his statements at face value. Wow. Really? We practically fell out of our chairs. And that, imperialists are at work. Fine. But maybe there's something more complex going on. Anyway, this is not likely to become the hinge of world fate. But again, I think there is a real humanitarian crisis and genocide. There is this technical question, the Yazidis, if this is a separate population, the idea of exterminating them, which seems to be the word from ISIS, that would be genocide. The other question is the statement from the emir of the Islamic State, that is ISIS. He wants to put his flag on the White House. Well, let's not waste too much sleep over that. Although, there are Tamerlane phenomena in world history. Go take a look at that play by Christopher Marlowe, and you'll see how sometimes in a period of social breakdown, these anti-civilization movements can sometimes take off. So what I would say is what's happening now with ISIS is not the same as Libya. It's Libya in reverse. Libya was bombing an existing government in order to help a gang of anti-civilization fanatics. What we've got now is bombing some anti-civilization fanatics, or at least pretending to, and this might be of some help to existing governments. And this is the hallmark of the situation. In this period of total world social, economic, political breakdown, any government is a potential ally. Any government. Some obviously are, Qatar. I don't know. Is that a government? What is that? It's about 60 or 100,000 people with a lot of money who destabilize the world. Maybe that's an exception. But any government is at least a potential ally. And therefore the method is work with existing governments against anti-civilization fanatics of whatever stripe, whatever religion they call themselves, right? They can call themselves born again this or born again that. That's no good. Civilization is what we need. And, of course, we're now harvesting the bitter fruits of the Arab Spring, right? The golden youth are long gone. The Islamists are getting battered. And what comes forward now is ethnic and, warlordism, right? Because that's what this ISIS actually is. So we'll be looking for Cardinal Filoni to say something. No bombing of Syria, Iran. Qatar, and indeed Saudi individuals and UAE individuals, right, where United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, all those people, back off, stop supporting ISIS, because without that money, ISIS could not exist. Where is Turkey, right? Turkey, close your border to the crazies, and you can cut off the supply line to those people. Similarly for Lebanon. And this Maliki, right? Stop the vendetta against Maliki. We were told, the Iraqi army ran away, and that's Maliki's fault. Well, now the Peshmerga of the Kurds have run away. You're going to blame Maliki for that too? I don't think so. They're not loyal to Maliki in any sense. Egypt is that. Sisi needs the Saudi money. I don't think he has any love for the Saudis. The Saudis need some big country. Well, Egypt is the biggest. So I think that's an opportunistic, this bombing, right? The U.S. has apparently bombed a couple of artillery pieces that were being used to shell a city inhabited by the Kurds. Now, let's just try to get this straight because it is complex. I would say there are three blocks. Got this other one, the Saudi-Egypt block. Maybe Jordan can be included. That I would think is a purely opportunistic block. In other words, the Saudis, in their feud with Qatar, have got to batten themselves onto some large power. Principled combination, although our sympathy, as always, goes to the Nasserist or neo-Nasserist Sisi. And then you got this other block, Qatar, Turkey, Hamas, and the Israelis. You can more or less identify. There's the Iran-Syria-Hezbollah block, and generally that's the better one. That's the one that needs to be stronger. Then you